Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Quick video today on some spicy words being said between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. All across the board there's some drama going on right now, and after Hamilton's comment last weekend about the fact that Charles Leclerc is a much more sensible driver than Verstappen based on their battle they had in Copse Corner at the Silverstone Grand Prix, Verstappen has clapped back to say that at 37 years of age, Hamilton has finally figured out how to take a corner. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Let's dive straight into things. Of course, like Mercedes, they're not really, I think, too optimistic for this particular weekend, but certainly over the coming weekends, they are confident they can get back into business. Of course, the press conferences were going down. Hamilton says, I don't think we are quite as of yet in a winning position, but we are not too far away. I think he was also asked by Ted Kravitz, or effectively told by Ted Kravitz, that at times, Hamilton was the fastest car on track last weekend. And it was kind of funny because Kravitz says, fastest car, you were the fastest car at times. And Hamilton says, driver, you mean, right, fastest driver, because I think Hamilton still believes, and I think probably is still the case based on the data, that, the Mercedes is not the quickest car. It probably still is the third quickest car, but more than likely marginally now, at least based on circuits like Silverstone, which seem to suit their car better compared to the Ferrari and the Mercedes. And when that technical directive is introduced from the French Grand Prix, things, of course, could change around once again. But Hamilton certainly clapping back to suggestions that it was all about the car last weekend and not his individual performance. But it's not just Hamilton that's been talking in these press conferences. Verstappen's kind of been questioned as well about the fact that he, often has these outbursts over radio and says, if the day comes that I'm not going to be upset about what happens, I'm not going to be interested in the sport anymore, right? Saying that the passion that I have is like if it goes away, that's just an example of that I'm not really into it anymore. And saying that some of the radio outbursts are just part of the way that passion comes out in racing when you're doing 200 mile an hour and trying to talk to your engineer. And of course, another driver who's in a similar boat there is Yuki Tsunoda, right? And Helmut Marko, he really does have a way with words. This guy on the Red Bull side says effectively to do with, problem child Tsunoda, that they've hired a new psychologist to help him, effectively overcome some of these issues, like anger issues that we're describing in pretty interesting terms, right? Kind of surprising that the team itself would disclose this stuff publicly, that they've brought in a new psychologist to help Tsunoda kind of deal with the anger issues that are affecting his performances in the race. So that was just to start off with a bit of drama. And then, of course, we've got this stuff as well. So a few days ago, after the Silverstone Grand Prix, Christian Horner said that he believed a Mercedes tyre strategy potentially costed Hamilton a shot at victory. Now, of course, the way it actually worked out in the race, it probably wouldn't have made a difference because the safety car comes in, everyone goes to the softs, and Hamilton probably would have been on P3 anyway. But there was a question to be raised when Hamilton was on that mega stint on the mediums. He was doing like 33 laps, of course, a 52 lap race. If Hamilton could have gone an extra 5-6 laps, there was a world in which he could have gone onto the softs and taken those to the end. Would that have been a quicker strategy than going onto the hard tyres? That, of course, was a question that was being raised by Christian Horner and the Red Bull team, saying that they were surprised that Lewis didn't take a soft in that situation. Now, I'm sure Mercedes did the calculations and said that, okay, if Hamilton extends this stint by 5 laps, then the mediums are going to fall off a cliff, and then putting the softs on, they're going to be quicker for 10 laps, maybe over the hards, but after that, they might fall off. I'm sure they did the calculations and said that actually, it probably is not going to be quicker. And of course, Lewis was asked to comment on this idea, and Hamilton says something, quite spicy, it must be said. I don't really care what that guy says. I don't really pay too much attention to what is said by that guy, right? Not even calling him Christian Horner, just saying it's calling him that guy. And this is kind of the full quote right here. I don't really care. I don't really pay much attention to what is said by that guy. From our knowledge and what I was told and from our experience, the tyres were not going to go the distance if he, stayed on the mediums for a few more laps. Or maybe he's talking about the softs, the potential of the softs here. They were definitely quicker for the first part, but there was huge degradation on the other cars that we had seen. Now, did we get it perfect? Who knows? But I think we made the right decision. And bigging himself up a little bit as well. No one could do the stint length that I did on that medium. I don't know if anyone else did that length and had that performance and pace on the end of that tyre. The question is, could I have kept going and then shortened my soft tyre run? But in hindsight, it's always positive. So always an interesting stuff. Of course, positive weekend in general for the team. Now, that wasn't it for the spicy stuff of the day. Last weekend, of course, Hamilton had some words to say after the race for Charles Leclerc, saying it was a great battle with Leclerc. Of course, eventually Hamilton comes up on top in the battle and said the following about Charles. Charles did a great job. What a great battle. He is a very sensible driver. Clearly a lot different to what I experienced last year. I went on to say in the next sentence that two of us went through Copse, no problem at all. Effectively a dig at Max Verstappen, saying that what happened the previous year in 2021, where those two go through Copse, and then Verstappen kind of turns in on Hamilton and goes off the track and into the barriers. But of course, Hamilton didn't take the apex as closely as he did against Leclerc. So Verstappen comes back and says the following: I think it is great that when you are 37 years old, at some point you understand how to reach the apex. So he does learn, right? To say, Hamilton, he should have learned how to do it by now. Effectively implying, if you read between the lines, that Hamilton's move last year was deliberate, right? That he knows full well how to take an apex, but he didn't do it on that occasion to try and force Verstappen off the road, right? So there's always this ton of drama between these guys. I think, like, it's interesting what we see here, right? Because they do seem to get on, right? You know, they shake hands, they seem relatively friendly, and every time you see a picture of the two of them together, like, everyone's commenting, okay, you know, it's only the fans that go at each other's necks, the drivers are fine. But then you get comments like this, right? And Hamilton's throwing a slide dig one way, and then, of course, Verstappen is, I think, well within his right to kind of clap back here and say that Hamilton's only just figured this out at 37 years old, how to take a corner. So let's, I guess, compare the two incidents right here. This is the top one. Of course, the Charles Leclerc incredible overtake of the used hard tyres against Hamilton. Incredible bravery from both drivers and precision as well for Charles Leclerc to retake the lead here into Cobbs. Of course, Hamilton eventually gets in with the DRS down the hanger straight. And then, of course, this is the previous incident from last year, where in a very similar incident, of course, Hamilton is much wider from the apex, maybe a metre or so wider from the apex than he was in this instance. And therefore, of course, they collide and Verstappen goes off the track and out of the race. Hamilton wins the race, collects the point after his time penalty that he does indeed get. So definitely different incidents. I do think Verstappen is within his right to clap back here and say, you know, Hamilton, at the end of the day, you're praising Charles Leclerc for making it through the corner, whereas in reality, it was you that made the room for him. And last year, a very different story, right? It wasn't necessarily Leclerc being the more sensible driver. It was more about, you know, Hamilton taking a more sensible line, you might well say. But it's not like Hamilton doesn't have room for his discussion as well. Of course, it's, you know, it's kind of funny really how the way that Max talks about the fact that, you know, Hamilton just about learned how to make an apex at 37 years of age. Of course, there are other examples of Verstappen, especially last season, not necessarily making the apex as well, right? So I'm sure Hamilton could come back and say, well, you know, Verstappen, he might be 24, but, you know, he needs to do a little bit more learning and actually how to make an apex as well. This, of course, is Brazil Interlagos in the Sao Paulo Grand Prix last year, where Verstappen completely missed the corner here at turn 4, forced Hamilton off the track, and yeah, certainly didn't make the apex on this one, right? So that's the thing between these two guys. It's only a matter of time between either Hamilton and Verstappen or between Horner and Toto Wolff or Horner and Hamilton or whatever, that you're going to get more words like this said. So that's the thing. It does kind of feel like, again, it's not like the championship fight from last year where everything was being thrown around all the time, but as soon as Mercedes get a bit more competitive and like actually can potentially compete with the Red Bulls on race pace, you start to get this stuff that happens again. So I think it's personally entertaining, but definitely intrigued your perspective on all this stuff in the comment section below. Just to finish off with a couple of interesting things. Firstly, this from Red Bull as well. The fact that helmet marker was explained why Honda's, what he calls a special turbocharger, is apparently more powerful around a track like Austria than it would be at other ones, right? Saying that at certain altitudes, for example, higher altitude tracks as Austria is, this kind of turbocharger, whatever Honda's produced here for the Red Bull car, has more advantage. Just saying that not only in addition to their greater straight line speed that Red Bull currently have over Ferrari and Mercedes, most certainly, their kind of, well, turbocharger that worked particularly well at these altitudes might well be even better. So definitely an interesting question, right? Because that's the thing, at different altitudes, a lot of things change, right? If it's a high altitude, you have to run more wing than you would to create the same downforce because the air is thinner, but also because the air is thinner, maybe the engine works less efficiently, and therefore a special turbocharger might well come to the rescue. So interesting stuff, no doubt about it. And as we were on the topic of discussion of Mercedes, wanted to mention this as well. Hamilton has also extended his longest ever streak without a victory to now 11 races, and it is of course the same story for Mercedes. Their longest ever streak since 2013 was Bahrain 2012 to Spain 2013, where they went 22 races without a victory. Of course, that run right now is extending, but on current trajectory, you'd imagine it will end sooner rather than later. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new as always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.